We are back. Golenbock University. I'm Ralph Tyko with the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, one of the three Baseball Mishuganas. Al Blumkin is here. He's a Baseball Mishuganer. Peter Golenbock, the professor, is here. He's a Baseball Mishugana. And we have two guests, so it's a full panel today. I'm going to let Peter introduce one of the guests.
It looks like we have a minion of Baseball Mishuganas right now.
Absolutely. I don't know about Doug. All I know about Doug, I know about Carmen. Carmen, you can't be in the minion, but
if I could just correct Ralph, a minion is 10. So at most we have a half a million.
Half a million.
Well, that's good. I need someone from Bronx Science High School to correct someone from Newtown High School. We were both from Jackson Heights. I did not know you attended the same junior high school as I did. Ironically named Joseph Pulitzer High School, and junior high, 145. And you told me, Doug, that you were inspired to be a journalist from what you learned in that school. And
that's very correct, Ralph. That's very true.
Okay.
And all these years later, I'm still hoping it's true.
Okay. Let's credit. I'd like to credit, if you will, who is the one teacher at Junior High School 145, or one or more, who influenced you, man or woman?
It's no contest. Her name was Evelyn Intrator, and she was a social studies teacher. But what Evelyn Intrator once told me, I will never forget, and that is very simple. Be persistent and persevere in life. And if you know me, and if you know my advocacy work, that's pretty much my whole game.
That's right.
Nice. I might add that particular school was the only school other than Golenbock University that I ever attended that I got a damn thing from. So let me. And you went on to Bronx Science. You guys. I have a Dartmouth guy, an Ivy Leaguer here. And Alan worked for IBM. Carmen is multi-talented. You're not only have a career as a professional baseball player, but you're a professional musician. And your mindset is along with what you're talking about. You're a union guy, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. Yeah, I've been with the Musicians Union, the AFM, for about 28 years. I've belonged to the union even longer than that, but I've worked for the union for the last 28 years.
Okay. Well, I'm going to let Peter take it, and the subject, again, is baseball players who played in the major leagues. Some we'd instantaneously recognize their name, Carmen among them, and some we would have no idea who they were. They came up for a cup of coffee, this, that, and the other thing. But we're talking now a billion-dollar industry with the strongest union in the world, truthfully, the most powerful union in the world, and they can't go back and take care of folks. It's scary. So, Peter, take it away.
Yeah, well, this is something. Back in 2001, I got a call from a lawyer who was representing the baseball players who, how do I explain this? In 1946, about a half a dozen to a dozen players went and played in Mexico, in the Mexican League. And the fellow who started the Mexican League paid these people a hell of a lot more money than they did in the major leagues. And so Ford Frick and the boys, they all got together and decided, let's fix these people. And basically, or maybe it was even Happy Chandler, and they fixed them by saying, if any player was not in the major leagues in 1946, they could not get a pension. And so what that did, beside, screwing all the people who went to Mexico in 1946, there were 500 or 600 players who had played before World War II, and many of whom had gone into the Army, and when they came out, they were too old to play baseball again. And so they retired. But because they did not play baseball in 1946, they were denied a pension. And so I wrote a full-page article in the New York Times about these people and how disgusting the whole thing was. And at the same time, Major League Baseball was giving Negro League players, people who never, ever, ever played in the major leagues, of course, because of racism, they gave them $10,000 a year. So as a result of that article, they ended up saying, okay, we'll give these guys $10,000 a year. And it was such that if the player died, his wife was not going to get any more money after that. In the union, if you died and your wife survived you, you continued to get paid. Anyhow, the whole thing was disgusting. So now we're up to 2017, and Doug Gladstone comes along and informs me there are 600 or 700 players who have been in the majors between 1 day and something short of, I think it's 3 years. He'll tell you the exact numbers.
4.
And 4 years. Okay, something short of 4 years. And as a result of that, because the way it was negotiated, if you were not a major leaguer for 4 years, you do not get a pension. And it's disgusting. And Doug has been writing letters to the head of the Players Union and to the commissioner and to newspaper editors and to whoever he could think of to get somebody apprised of the fact that these people who went and played Major League Baseball, some of whom have very, very little money, deserve to be in the union and to get a pension.
Peter, it's Doug here. Can I give your listeners a better historical context, and it might help.
It might help. The floor is yours, by all means.
Thank you. I'm going to piggyback upon what Peter said. He is correct. 1947, you had to be on a major league roster on April 1st, 1947. No fooling. To be eligible for a pension, you needed to have played 5 years. Then in 1969, that vesting requirement was lowered to 4 years. And then in 1980, and this is where I know Carmen rolls his eyes every time he hears about it, during the Memorial Day weekend, there was a player strike. You might recall it. That was averted when Ray Grebe, the late Ray Grebe, who was the negotiator for the league, went to Don Fear and the late Marvin Miller with the following offer. Boys, if you call off your strike, from now on, I'll representing the owners, I will let your membership have or buy into the umbrella health insurance coverage plan after sitting on a bench for 1 game. All you need is 1 game day worth of service credit. You can ride the pines. You don't have to play the field. As long as you're on an active roster for 1 game day, you can buy into the umbrella health insurance coverage plan. And guess what? If you're on an active major league roster for 43 game days, we'll give you a pension. Now, it might not be the biggest pension, but according to published reports, anyone since 1980, and a pension is predicated on years of service and your final average salary, but anyone since 1980 who has played Major League Baseball is getting a minimum of $34,000 a year. Now, that's fine for anyone who played after 1980. But for men like Mr. Fanzone, the great Texas Rangers pitcher, David Clyde, one of my personal favorites, George the Stork Theodore of the New York Mets, none of these guys.
My favorite too. The Stork was instrumental in '73. He's a very underrated guy.
None of these guys.
He's not getting a pension. And Carmen, how much did you miss it by?
About 85 days.
85 days.
Yeah.
Now, I want to also, Alan, if I could, I want to just give our listeners the historical context. So that's one part of the equation. The second part of the equation is what Peter alluded to. In 1993, Major League Baseball gave 35 Negro League veterans and their spouses health insurance. Then 4 years later, in 1997, in part to remedy, like Peter said, the institutional racism that beset the sport, and to honor Jackie Robinson on the 50th anniversary of him breaking the color barrier, Major League Baseball also gave the pre-1947 players up to $10,000 a year, and the Negro League veterans up to $10,000 a year. And then finally in 2004, and Peter, you know, you're a great history professor in Florida, but you've got a senator in Florida who doesn't know anything. Bill Nelson. Bill Nelson was asked by Barack Obama's predecessor in the United States Senate, Carol Braun Mosley, to intervene to get more Negro League veterans pensions. And sure enough, Bill Nelson in 2004 worked with Major League Baseball to get 85 more veterans of the Negro Leagues, $350 a month for life, or they had the option to take $40,000 for 4 years. That's where we are. And you know what? And I know I cut someone off. I apologize for that. I just wanted to give historical context and background. But it's great that MLB is doing right by the men who couldn't play baseball as a result of the color of their skin. But any employment benefits attorney will tell you that the Negro League veterans can't be receiving better benefits than those men who had a contractual employment relationship with the league. And the irony of this is there are plenty of pre-1980 players. You know, that suit that Peter alluded to, that was a disaster because the attorneys ridiculously tried to say that these men, the pre-80 players, their Title VII rights had been violated. Well, hey, you know what? A lot of pre-1980 players are persons of color. I know Carmen didn't play with them, but the catcher Kuno Barragan of the Chicago Cubs, Cuban American, or Wayne Cage of the Cleveland Indians, or Aaron Pointer of the old Houston Colt 45, the team that was ultimately to become the Houston Astros. All those guys are persons of color. So mounting a Title IX or Title VII, I forget which discrimination case, was ridiculous. And that's why that lawsuit was tossed. So now I've said my piece. I hope I've given people context. And go ahead. I'm sorry, Alan, for cutting you off.
No, actually, you cut me off, and thank you for doing that anytime. It adds to the program. Alan Blumkin.
Yeah.
You started to say something.
No, I just said he cut you off, not me.
Yeah, he did. Inadvertently and with great reason.
I mean, Bill Dennehy.
Are you guys playing offense? Do you have competent attorneys that can go to both the union and Major League Baseball and show them why it's in their best interest just for the publicity? If it came out tomorrow that Major League Baseball and the union conspired to help people, some indigent people, some that don't really need the money, but it would be nice, and it certainly would level the playing field. If they did that, you know how good they'd look in the public eye, where they're looked at now as greedy SOBs that could take Vin Scully's last year and have the people in L.A. not hear his broadcast because of a dispute with the carrier. The whole year, his last year broadcasting. That's the greed that people perceive Major League Baseball and the union, because they conspire, I think, to wreak from them. And the publicity alone would be great. Do you guys agree with that?
For myself, all I'm going to say is that we have been approached by a number of attorneys, who are interested in possibly going to bat on behalf of Carmen and the rest of the men. And they're only down to about 500, by the way.
Yeah, it would be, compared to the $10 billion that they make every year, this would be a drop in the bucket. I did a book with Bill Dennehy. He's been my friend since the senior league. Bill, unfortunately, had a lot of cortisone shots while he was a player. He was a left-handed pitcher who was his rookie card. It was he and Tom Seaver were the two pitchers on his rookie card. And after his first victory, where he was, they thought that he was going to be the star of the two, he ended up hurting his arm so badly that for the rest of his career he had arm trouble. And I do believe that one victory is the only victory he ever had. He is now blind as a result of all of those shots. He's now blind. And God knows he could use, the pension money. And it's heartbreaking that they're not giving it to him. And it's not as though they don't know about it, because they certainly do know about it. They're just, in my opinion, they're just selfish.
Well, they're selfish and greedy and petty, but again, they do not owe Carmen or David or Bill Dennehy what is called the duty of fair representation. So Carmen pays all these union dues, and after he retires, they don't have to be their legal advocates anymore. And the league doesn't have to negotiate about this matter. And, I just want to say here and now for the record, Steve Rogers, who is Tony Clark is, of course, the first former player ever to become the executive director of the Players Association. Steve Rogers is the pension liaison. You know how many times Steve Rogers says, well, the league doesn't want to talk about this issue. He's being very disingenuous. The reason why he's being disingenuous is because, as he well knows, he's not telling the whole story. The league doesn't have to negotiate about this matter. The ball has to be in the court first of the Players Union. Pardon me, the Players Association. That's what they like to call themselves. So if they don't introduce the matter, it's not getting before Rob Manfred.
That's right. That's right.
What is stopping them from introducing it?
There are a handful of former Major League players who, how do I say this? There's a certain political party whose philosophy is, I've got mine, the rest of you can go jump in the lake. You might guess who that might be. And it's the same thing with the people of that persuasion who are former Major League players who are part of the players union. Their attitude towards these men are tough noogies.
And also, I want to lay the blame also out in Colorado Springs, because that is precisely the attitude of the members of the Major League Baseball Players Alumni Association. Tough noogies. You're not part of the club. You're on the outside looking in, and we're not going to go to bat for you.
Yep. No, it's as simple as that, and it's disgusting. It's disgusting. It's you would think that you were taking the money out of their own pockets, and clearly they're not. This would come out of a general fund of which there are plenty of money to make these people's lives comfortable,
Carmen is currently being paid. Carmen and the rest of the men are currently being paid out of money from the, euphemistically, we'll call it the Steinbrenner luxury tax, a.k.a. the competitive balance tax.
Okay.
But, Peter, as you well know, the Players Welfare Fund, a friend of Carmen and mine, Gene Heiser, who's also one of the affected ball players, out of Baltimore, and he was a Cub. In fact, Carmen, weren't you best man at his wedding?
Carmen?
Did we lose Carmen?
Sounds like we lost Carmen.
We must have lost Carmen. But
okay.
Gene
Do we have Al
Heiser was
Blumkin?
able. Yeah, Gene Heiser was able to obtain for me the current players' welfare and benefits fund, and there's $2.7 billion in there. There is way enough money to pay these people. And I don't understand Tony Clark's reluctance to divvy up more of the collective pie.
I couldn't agree with you more. And the only way to do this would be to put a full-page article in the New York Times to convince somebody that this is something worth doing. That's what I was able to do back in 2001. I would hope that you should be able to do this since this is your baby now. Though I know from the correspondence I've gotten from you over the last several months is that you're trying as hard as you can.
Doug, I can just tell you the only thing that scares Major League Baseball is the prospect of losing their antitrust agreement. Can something be done over this to threaten them with that? Because I'm just asking.
Friend of mine has already reached out to United States Senator Chuck Schumer of New York.
Okay.
So we are exploring that avenue.
Good.
I'm glad I'm thinking along the same lines.
Yeah.
Wish Carmen were here. I wish I would have liked to get his input on this as him being a union person.
No way to get him back.
He hung up. And Doug, do you have his number?
Sure, I've got all of his numbers, but that would require me hanging up. And
then please, if you would do that, and I'll just take a break, put a little bumper music in, and why don't we all come back in 5 minutes?
Okay.
So do you want me to hang up and call you back in 5 minutes?
Yes, and you too, Alan, if you would.
Okay. Well,
all right, fellas. Thank you.
Bye.
It's open. Oh, no, it's not. No, I'm not done. Carmen. Oh, good. Let me just try and find Carmen.
Gentlemen, are you there? Hello? 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 Hello?
Yeah, but
Hello, are you there?
it was really going well.
Hello, this is Carmen. Can you hear me?
It was very nice of Mr. Dan.
Hello, this is Carmen. Can you hear me? Hello? 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 Hello?
The host has joined the conference.
Hello?
Gentlemen.
Hello, this is Carmen. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can now.
I could hear you all along, but you couldn't hear me.
No. I'm glad you played the home edition and called back.
Right. Yeah, I could hear everybody, but you just couldn't hear me for some reason.
Okay, I'm going to push a button, put us back on. Peter and Doug will be here. Alan is here. Am I correct?
I'm on the phone.
Who's here?
I'm back. Okay, I'm back. I'm here.
Okay, here we go. We are back. And
Okay, I'm here.
Yeah, Carmen's here. Carmen, you heard everything we were talking about?
Yes, I did. I kept talking, but nobody heard me.
All right. Well, that's technical difficulties. I don't know if you're into Comcast where you are, but Comcast is the bane of my technological existence. So if that's not it, I apologize to them for this one time. Carmen, would you react to the things that we were saying?
Well, you mentioned something about I wish we had Carmen there regarding the pension. I mean, a union, because I work for the union.
Right.
The fact that when I played and when most of the players that are pre-80 played, we didn't make any money. And the fact that, and there was no pension. But now, the guys today, they're making so much money that even though I'm a union person, and if they have half a brain, they won't need a pension. I think the average salary is around $5 million. The minimum salary when I played was $16,500.
Wow.
It's just completely
the
backwards.
minimum salary. I'm back. The minimum salary is going up in 2019 to $535,000, and Carmen is correct. The average salary is a whopping $4.4 million.
Right.
Yep.
It's completely backwards. It just doesn't make any sense at all. And but that doesn't mean they have to do anything about it. But it's just the idea that they just don't want to react.
Just for clarification, to be fair, what's the medium salary? Not the average, but the medium.
Doug, you would probably know that more than me.
Yeah, I don't. However, I'm sorry.
Well, it doesn't matter. I mean, the minimum is $495,000. The minimum is $495,000. So what's the difference what the medium is? It doesn't make any difference.
Right.
Well, the fact that
people are making a hell of a lot of money, and they can
for sure.
they can afford to help these people out. They absolutely can.
Well, most things, like I said before, most things are about the money. This is not about the money. This is about just doing the right thing.
This is about equity.
Right.
This is really about equity, gentlemen. And the employment attorney, I'll reiterate it again, any employment benefits attorney, and believe me, I've spoken to a lot of them, have said they are being shafted, they are being taken advantage of, and you may have already touched upon this, and if so, I apologize, but Peter, you know this more than anyone because you're always writing to me. Why isn't the media today, not the media, the media, why isn't the media taking up this cause? You know, it's fine. You want to jump on the bandwagon when performance-enhancing drugs hit the fan. Oh, everybody and their kid brother is writing columns about that. But for people who are getting hosed like Carmen is, nothing, nada, zilch. And the only thing I can attribute it to, the only thing, is that these guys are so gutless that they don't want to lose their contacts in MLB and the union. That's how petrified they are of writing something.
Biggest problem in labor negotiation is that union heads get into bed with management, and they oftentimes change positions. Management will recruit from unions. It's not just baseball, but baseball is thriving. Now, may I ask you, gentlemen, if the times we live in is something that's damning your project? And I might as well be honest, Trump and the mindset that he's trying to put on this country?
I'd say no. I'd say that's not the problem. I'll tell you part of the problem. When I was trying to get pensions for the guys who didn't play in 1946, I ran into 2 or 3 former major leaguers who were part of the union structure. Mark Belanger, for instance, he was a shortstop for the Baltimore Orioles, I believe, during the 70s. He was one of those guys. He was one of those guys who was absolutely dead set against giving these guys a nickel. I mean, very much like Al Lopez. You probably don't remember. But when they tried to form a union back in the late 1940s, you had players like Al Lopez, who were he was from Tampa, very conservative people who didn't believe in unions, who didn't believe that the players should join together to bargain. And this is some of what
I will tell
get.
you, gentlemen, I will tell you that I've spoken to people who have spoken to the late Mark Belanger of Pittsfield, Massachusetts, and they say that Steve Rogers is positively a prince compared to Mark Belanger. And you already know my feelings about Steve Rogers.
You know, it's kind of ironic that I stood up for Mark Belanger's sister's wedding in Pittsfield. We were all teammates. Linda married Jim Thornton, and so I stood up for that wedding also. That was, I think, after Mark had passed.
Yeah, I guarantee you he would not have stood up for you. No, there's politics involved in this. And the politics have absolutely nothing to do with Trump, believe me. Nothing to do with Trump. Has to do with how these players feel about letting go of some of this money. Some of them just don't want to do it. And it's not even their money. That's what's so totally weird about it.
Is it the pride that they take in having completed 4 years or 5 years, whatever it was, to be pensioned, and I made it, and that kind of thing?
That's a very good question. I suspect that that's part of it. But I suspect, too, that the other part of it is the same philosophy of those, the conservative party people who just don't believe, for instance, that the Affordable Care Act, that people should be forced to be in a program so that the poor can get insurance. I mean, you saw an entire political party trying to gut the Affordable Care Act so that 18 million people were not going to get health care. If it hadn't been for one man, John McCain, I guarantee you 18 million people right this moment would have been out when it comes to health care. And so this
How
is
can
the same
these
sort
people
of
expect to be reelected with an ideology of that, even though it
that's the question of the week. Well, I'll tell you why. Because we have a candidate who basically said, I could shoot somebody in Broadway in broad daylight and still get elected. And it looks to me as though a certain percentage of the people in this country would say, yes, that's correct. Why?
He got elected. There was a case against him besides Trump University. And by the way, we're taking in all the students, PhDs offered. It's all free. It's Golenbock University, Comfortably Zoned Radio Network.
That's it, yes, except that mine is not $25,000 to join.
Right. Well, we give out a much better education than you would get.
That's true. You get sheepskin diplomas in this one.
Right.
Anyway, let's get back to the topic, shall we?
Okay. Al Blumkin, you want to interject? You were a working man all your life.
I'm not equipped to discuss this. Okay, I think from what all you were saying, that this is a very big injustice. But I'm basically getting educated. I can't come. I don't like to comment on things I don't my knowledge is very limited.
Oh well,
fair enough.
I would be struck mute with that.
I don't know everything. Yeah.
So I mean, the fact of the matter is that
there would be a divine interaction or interjection, and boop, he couldn't talk, couldn't say anything. 2 weeks ago he couldn't hear. Today he can't talk. It couldn't be better. I'm wondering if Doug has rejoined us.
I've already commented a couple of moments ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, I'm losing it. We're getting towards the end. Doug, would you sum it up from your standpoint, please?
From my standpoint, it's very simple. Major League Baseball does not have to negotiate about this matter. So when the Major League Baseball Players Association says, well, MLB doesn't want to do anything, that's very disingenuous. They don't have to do anything unless the Players Association brings it to the collective bargaining table. And by the way, they do not have to wait till 2021 when the next CBA expires. Tony Clark and his roster of Hall of Famers, and really he's assembled quite the talented staff. Dave Winfield, besides Mr. Rogers, Dave Winfield, Jeffrey Hammonds, Ralph, he's out your way, right? The former San Francisco Giant. Jeffrey Hammonds is on
yes.
for Tony Clark. All of these individuals, for some reason, have not told or in concert with Tony Clark, just do not want to divvy up the pie anymore for men like Carmen and David and George Stork Theodore. And here's where I implore people to contact their player reps, because most of these player reps don't know anything either. Some of the smarter ones do. I don't know if you recall, fellas, when Seth Doolittle was traded to the Nationals from the Oakland A's lost a great players rep. I don't know whether or not Mr. Doolittle has, in fact, inherited that coveted role to the Washington Nationals, but he's a smart guy. Here's another smart guy. Curtis Granderson, formerly of the Mets, now with the Los Angeles Dodgers. He's the union president. Curtis Granderson, the son of two Chicago working parents who both were in the public school teaching system. How he can turn his back on men like Carmen is anathema to me. And then there's Andrew Miller, probably the best reliever in the game, other than Kenley Jensen, and Matt Harvey. Matt Harvey and Andrew Miller respectively the Mets and the Cleveland Indians, and they are on the Players Union Executive Council. They're on the Players Pensions Committee. Granderson, Harvey, and Miller, the three wise men. Those are the people I would implore everybody to bend their ear, to talk their ear off. Because I remember when Don Fehr left. When Don Fehr retired, do you remember, Peter, how much he got? Curtis Granderson was quick to announce in a press release, we voted him a $19 million payout.
Whoa.
$19 million for doing his
Whoa.
job as the executive director. You don't think he would have been happy with just a gold watch? So
Sure.
there's a lot of money out there.
And he made money over the years, too. It's not like they were shortchanging him just to get to the end.
Correct. Correct. He was making $1 million salary every year since the early 80s. In the my final analysis where I want to just tell people if they can, and I'm going to, it's public information. Your listeners should write to Tony Clark, email him at tonyc@mlbpa.org, and please copy my good friend Steve Rogers, Steve R. @mlbpa.org, and tell them to do the right thing.
Exactly.
Tell them that it is ridiculous that the men like Carmen and David and Stork Theodore, who have more service credits than, in most cases, men who played just 43 game days after 1980. Those guys are getting hosed while a guy playing after 1980 is making $34,000 a year. And I thank you for your time.
One thing, Doug, was Sal Magli, who went and played in Mexico in those years, was he part of this at all?
No, the barber was not part of this. I'll tell you who was part of it, though, who got burned. Peter will probably remember this. Hal Lanier's dad. Hal Lanier's dad.
I went to visit. When I was writing my St. Louis Cardinal and St. Louis Browns book, I went to visit Hal Lanier's dad, Max.
Max Lanier,
right? Max, yes, he lived in his trailer home in the middle of Florida. His wife had a breathing apparatus, had air. She had to breathe with air. These people had no money. It was so sad. He was one of the great pitchers for the Cardinals during the 40s. And as a result, I believe, of the war, or he may have even gone, he may well have been one of those who went to Mexico. At any rate, he got no pension.
He went to Mexico.
After that article came out in the New York Times, you can look up that article in the New York Times. I'm very, very proud of it. I think the year was 2001. As a result
I will,
of that
and I'm going to
article,
post a link to it on the website.
If you can find it. At any rate, they gave Max $10,000 because that's what they were giving to the Negro League players, and it was a big help for him and all the other guys who were making very small salaries. I mean, nobody before 1977 was making very much money at all, except Mays, Mantle, and Hank Aaron.
Hey, I can tell you the story about Carl Hubble in his later years was treated by Dr. P, who was a spring training doctor. You may remember him, Carmen, Dr. Pearson in Peoria with the Cubs and the A's. And he treated Carl Hubble for free because Carl Hubble was indigent, and whatever it was he was getting, I don't even know if it was anything from the pension. It was a small drop in the bucket. He was living in a small little apartment. This is Carl frickin' Hubble. This is
That's
not.
Right. Well, he had retired too soon. So he could not qualify for a pension. It was awful.
Right.
Just awful. Yeah.
So let's hope we can make a difference and get some change going.
Keep up the good work,
for
Doug.
being here for the first time.
Job. Yep.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I appreciate it. Your props.
And
we'll talk
Al,
to you soon.
I want you to know, Al Blumkin did confirm that Max Lanier did play in the Mexican League. So, did indeed.
He was having a great year in 1946. He was 6-0 with an ERA of around 1.5, and he jumped the Cardinals, who were notorious among the
cheap.
Major League teams back then.
They were unbelievably cheap. Yeah, that was Branch Rickey and his cheapness.
That was Breeden.
Great a man as Rickey was.
Had left already.
Oh, had he left?
He left after 1942. But Breeden, Ken Breeden, the owner, who was very, very tight.
Very tight.
Run from Rickey.
Terrible. Yep. Rickey too. Both of them.
Oh yeah.
Yep. All right, folks.
All right, gentlemen. Thank you very much. We'll be back next week. Carmen, I appreciate it, and
thank you. It's my pleasure.
Doug,
my pleasure.
Thank you both for guesting. And
thank you, Ralph.
to those of you out there, I want to implore you all to keep on keeping on. As Doug says, I'll paraphrase him, it's a matter of persistence and putting one foot in front of the other and keep on going. And that's what advocacy is about. That's what raising your kids about. That's what doing a show. That's what it's all about, just persistency. So thank you, everybody. Golenbock University, Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. I'm Ralph Tyko, the weak link of it all. Adios.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay.